The following conversation on the Broken Instruments podcast is not meant to provide medical advice and is solely to recount anecdotal experiences from those who work directly with hospitalized patients during the COVID-19 pandemic. Please seek the advice of local health officials for any COVID-19 related questions or concerns.
We've been doing this for a long time now.
There's a side to life that a lot of people don't see.
And they try to avoid it.
It's important to separate your work life and your personal life, but sometimes you go home and you still think about that patient, their family.
Yeah. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Of course, man.
We
Of
always
course.
have good conversations, though.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. And if anything, I think the conversations we've had in the past brought up a lot for me to know that these are types of stories that I think people need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So before anything, I want to welcome Ms. Kiana Garcia and Mr. Son Lam. We have two nurses who I consider in the highest regard because you guys are actually frontliners. And a lot of people throw this out there, especially in the past couple of years, that they're a frontline worker. And for me, I mean, I'm a nurse, but I know for damn sure I'm not going to fake that I was a frontliner this entire pandemic. So I thought it was important to bring on actual frontline workers. And I'll probably put a medical disclaimer on the front of this, that this is your experience, right? There's millions of nurses out there that worked during this pandemic. And I just think it's important that people hear stories of what actually happened. And I think there's so much narrative that goes on outside that for some reason, the ones that have actually dealt with a lot on the floor, you are the one that's a little bit more quiet for some reason. And I think people need to hear those stories. And of course, this is sensitive to everybody, what everybody's been through the past couple of years. People have lost loved ones. People have experienced death. The amount of deaths that we've dealt with this past couple of years is it's too much already. And it's one of those things where I can see it in someone's eyes if they've seen treacherous, outrageous misfortune and unfortunate things. So I want to welcome you guys to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely crazy times.
Yeah.
I've never thought that I would experience something like that.
No, and this is where I wanted to ask you first. When did you become a nurse, and why?
So I'll start.
Go
I
for it,
became a
son.
nurse. I think 2017 was when I graduated. Started working 2018. I became a nurse because I don't know. I wanted the medical knowledge to resuscitate someone. I remember, there was one episode where my dad was sick, and I don't know if you ever been to in that sort of situation where my dad was in the ICU, and I knew nothing about the healthcare system at that time, and it's just like, dude, it's so complicated. You just have to take other people's word on like your dad's life. You don't really know what to do.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know what to do.
Damn.
In the short, yeah.
Damn.
And now it's like, wow, I know a lot. It's been a long journey.
Yeah. No, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Kia, you became a nurse around the same time, I think, right?
2019.
Nice.
Why?
Yeah.
Aside from my mom pushing me to do it, and
course.
coming from a family with mostly nurses,
Yeah.
I wanted to help people in a way that they can't help themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people jump into nursing for that very deep reason. And of course, that gets clouded a lot of the times, especially in nursing school. And me seeing aspiring nurses come in, to a school, like, the schools that I work for, we come in with this deep desire to help people. And yeah, I get it a lot that, like I saw someone take care of my family member and I didn't know how. I wanted to learn how to care for somebody. That was honestly what I said I wanted to be a nurse for. And then, things happen, especially if you're in nursing school or you start working on the floor. I think I tell my students this all the time, like, nursing is not easy. anything in the medical field is not easy, and it really takes something very deep to push forward through those times of adversity, whatever it is. Like, you're tired, you have an extended shift, or too much on your patient load, right? And it's the reason why you started this, to really push through. A lot of people don't realize how hard nursing is, and we're not even talking about 2020. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, let's go back in time, I guess, to January, February, March 2020. There's talks about this coronavirus coming from China. We're having airports like block flights and stuff like that. You both work in the ICU, and at that time especially, right? You guys were both in the ICU together. What was going through your head? What were you thinking? What were the talks like around that time, January to March? Was it a big deal at that point, or when did it hit you like, all right, this shit is actually real?
The first time I ever heard of COVID was probably around
January, December.
No, I had to talk about it with my cousin.
Oh.
My cousin, he's a dentist, and
Okay.
I remember it was like around Christmas party, and he was freaking out. He was like, it's bad. China's building this, at the time they were building this makeshift hospital as fast as they could, trying to take care of, all these sick COVID patients as fast as possible. To be honest, I really didn't take it seriously.
This is December.
Life was good for me, yeah.
2019.
December 2019, 2020. Been in ICU for like, I don't know, like about a year at that point. Yeah, it was, and I felt comfortable. Yeah, like you said, nursing is a huge learning curve. I remember it was definitely a culture shock, knowing what you don't know. Yeah, but at that point I was comfortable in my ICU skills, and yeah, I did not see COVID coming.
What was going through your head, Kia?
I heard about it first from a coworker in January, so I didn't really take it seriously either, because there wasn't much information about it. But then March, it just happened so fast.
I remember seeing it in the news, though. I don't know. Do you guys remember that? Like, showing pictures of China building all these hospitals,
makeshift hospitals, and then I remember seeing news reports of like airports literally quarantining people that were arriving from certain flights from China. And I mean, me, the regular civilian, I mean, I guess as a nurse educator, we were told about these things, but I don't think anybody took it seriously.
Yeah.
The first few, I don't know, like, I mean, when was like the COVID patient wave in your hospital?
I'd say about end of March.
Yeah.
End of March?
Yeah.
End of March. And I think that's when the lockdown started, right? It was like end of March, March 20 something. That's when everyone went like strictly lockdown. I remember I was told from work, like, all right, we're canceling all clinical rotations, all this stuff. To the 2 weeks to slow the spread started back in March. It's tough because, I mean, I know that we want to be completely sensitive to what people have been through. When was the first death that you encountered?
Wow, that's hard to remember. Wow.
And that's what's crazy is that you want to think back to the first one, but there was so much I think you experienced, right?
You know what? It came on pretty fast. I remember April at that time. You know what? Rich, remind me. New York got hit bad.
New York was kind of first, right?
Yeah, it was. I think. Yeah, you know what? Hearing what was going on in New York, like didn't have enough ventilators, had to fly nurses in. Like it was pretty bad in New York. That's when I was like, wow, okay, this is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kid, do you remember that first time where you're like, oh shoot, this is for real?
I remember the first time I took care of a COVID patient. I got floated to a different unit that wasn't our home unit, and I was by myself with other tele nurses. So I was the only ICU nurse. And we had a patient down there. And before I entered the unit, like there's zippers, like it was all zipped up before you entered. And then they gave me like a package, had a bunny suit, shoe covers, hair cover. And I was just scared. I was like,
Dude, well, I mean, at that point, we didn't know exactly
yeah,
what it was.
Exactly.
That's what I think makes it worse. It's like it was this novel disease. We didn't
Yeah.
knew nothing about it.
Exactly. Damn. It almost. I mean, the first time we started thinking it was serious, people started thinking like the movie Outbreak, where like we're wearing hazmat suits and everything now, and like the smallest little like opening in it, you're like, dude,
Wow,
it's a death sentence.
That's seriously what it felt like. We
Yeah.
were gowned up to the max.
Yeah. Oh man, what did you guys have? I know there was like a big talk of like shortage in
yeah.
PPE and things like that.
Yeah, I think at one point in the beginning they were making us reuse our N95 mask.
Yeah.
Oh shoot.
Yeah,
3
we would.
times.
They would give us our N95 mask, and at the end of the shift, we would dump it in this big. It looked like a big trash can.
You would
And
dump
they
it.
would. What would they? How would they clean it with UV? UV. They would clean it somehow. Yeah.
UV light.
Yeah, we were short on ventilators as well. Everything was just so short. It would just happen so
dude.
fast. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember all the news was talking about like how many ventilators we needed, like hundreds of thousands at that time. I mean, what's your take on the ventilator thing? Because I've heard two different sides. Like, all right, the ventilators were saving people, but it also created a bigger issue where if you got to the ventilator, you're kind of
Yeah.
it's
I
almost
think,
over.
Well, that's my view. It's like if you get COVID, you either one of the lucky ones where you have mild symptoms and you just make it through,
Yeah.
or you get really sick and you're on a ventilator.
Yeah.
And all those people that go through the ICU, they're one of the unlucky ones.
Oh my God.
It's rare for someone to go through the ICU on a ventilator and make it out.
With COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rare.
Yeah. And your unit was the ICU, but it wasn't the COVID unit yet when it first started. And then your whole unit just transformed
Yes.
into it, right?
Yeah.
Where all the
It's a
COVID patients
surge.
went straight to you guys.
Yeah.
It bypassed the ER, or it was ER and you guys were all like the kind
They
of
go to do the ER first,
okay.
and then they would get up, try to get the patient up to the ICU as fast as possible. But there'll be times where it's bottleneck, and we have to go down ER, take care of them down there.
Oh man, it's hard to even imagine, especially at that first big wave when we didn't know what to expect. Visitors weren't allowed, and I think when people started passing away, everybody started thinking about like, all right, if you go in the hospital, it's pretty much over. That's what we thought at that time. And then you think about your family, and you're like, dude, family can't even go.
Yeah.
I'm sure you encountered countless times where someone was like really going. What were the things you guys had to do to kind of connect family with that person again?
iPads.
iPads. I think that would be the best way.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a hard situation.
Not a lot of people know this, but my grandma passed away early in 2021, and we had the iPad to FaceTime with her as much as we could, and it was one of those like, all right, the nurse is available to FaceTime you guys now. So it's kind of like wherever you're at work or whatever, you just log on to the FaceTime and you see your loved one just in the frame. And I'm grateful for all those nurses that set those up, because I know it's not easy. You're managing so many other people, and then you're trying to make time for this one person because it doesn't look good already.
I think they did what they had to do. Like,
Yeah.
it's a risk to come as a family member. It is a risk to come into a quarantine unit where it is nothing but COVID patients.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm gonna put it simply, it's a sad way to die.
Yeah.
They're just an ICU room is not pretty. It's super lit up, all these medical devices, all these lines, and yeah, it's just.
And we're talking just the standard ICU unit, not
Yeah.
even during a pandemic, right? Damn. I think one thing you said to me that really made me realize that type of, like, I guess, visualize what really happened was, you said instead of preserving life, you were managing death.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's, just to wrap my head around that, like the nursing profession or any medical field is about preserving life, maintaining, sustaining life, making it manageable so that they can go out in the world and function again. When you said that, I was like, all right, what's going on at this point? And I think we talked even way after like the first case was known, right? To know that medical professionals were starting to shift into this mindset of we're just managing death. Like we're catching this one person because they're about to go, and then this next person's about to go. And this is completely like, I'm just curious too, because was there a time where you started getting compassion fatigue?
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
How far into the pandemic, I guess, when would that happen?
I don't know when it really started. It just creeps up. And it's funny. It's I can't describe it. You feel it when it's like there already.
Like, you don't even expect it. It just happens. So you're just like, you know what? I'm done.
Like, wow, I'm super tired. Yeah, there was a little depression in there just because of the sheer exhaustion. For me, at least it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first wave was bad, but I'll tell you, the second wave was even worse.
And we're talking the second wave, like, was that summer or like fall of 2020 or holidays?
January 2021, I think, when it really started to hit.
That was the big one.
January, all the way till April.
So you're saying that one was like harder
Way
to
worse.
manage?
I don't know. It's hard to manage to begin with just because of the sheer amount of patients that we were getting. It's a lot more in the second wave.
More.
It's hard for me to differentiate between the first wave and the second wave sometimes, but definitely I know the second wave was way worse. And yeah, I don't know when it creeps up to you, compassion fatigue. I don't know when it started, but I definitely know I was like, oh, okay, this is exhaustion here.
Like physical exhaustion and then
physical, emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Like it's crazy because I would say nurses know how to manage their emotions very well. And I know some people that might hear this, they're kind of like, all right, well, how can you have compassion fatigue?
Yeah,
it's so weird. I mean, that's the problem.
It's funny.
Yeah, because you care so much.
Yeah.
But then when you're managing something that's always happening, that naturally happens. So there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we just have to be aware that that's happening. But I think by the time you were getting that compassion fatigue, mental fatigue, emotional, people were quitting or people were going on leave.
Oh, a lot.
So not only were you dealing with the pandemic itself, but staffing shortages started happening.
Mm-hmm. I remember every time I would come into work, at least 5, 6, 7 people would die. Second wave.
In
a lot
one
of
shift.
people, a lot of nurses retired, especially the older ones. They were scared. They have to protect themselves too.
Sure.
We're talking about
It's
like
understandable. Yeah.
nurses in their 60s or 70s.
That have been nurses for
Wow.
like 30, 40 years at that point.
Actually, it just reminded me of a story.
Yeah.
There'll be nurses where they're in their 60s working. I'm a young guy.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like, I feel healthy. I feel like I got a good support system. Like, I never pictured myself to go through compassion fatigue. But, yeah, there's nurses out there 60, 70 doing the same thing I'm doing. And I'm like 35.
Yeah.
I feel healthy. Yeah.
No, and at that point, they understand the risk, and they were still diving in.
Yeah.
Jeez,
wow,
man.
I give it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of hardworking nurses out there for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of someone that holds their emotions in a lot, I think Kia, you hold your emotions in a lot. And I think there's only one time I saw you release your emotions. It was during our wedding, and you were crying. What was your challenge, I guess, to stay sane during this entire thing? Because we didn't get to talk much, even throughout. Because I knew you were busy for one, and you were always working. And I think what you would tell Gracie is like, you guys are short staffed and you guys are overworking at that point. What was your mindset like? What was your process like? How did you get through it?
That's a hard question.
Well, you lived through it,
You know
right?
what?
So I gotta know.
It does. You know what? Even from my perspective, it does look like Kiana keeps her composure.
She does.
It's it was a war zone. Yeah, I always wondered that too. She showed up to work. She did all her shift.
Yeah, and I think Kia, you're so just open to anything. You just feel like you're free flowing when it comes to the way you are. I can imagine though, there's some battle going on inside you that you're like stressed out or whatever. Not a lot of people can hold their emotions in that way. I'm really interested to know how you deal with it.
Talk about the time where, I remember it wasn't easy for you too. Like, you would come into shift, beginning of shift, you would worry, right? Worry would be an understatement.
There you go.
Would you remember during those times we were like proning patients, and
Oh shoot.
would you pray before your shift?
Still do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I've come to realize like these patients are critically ill.
Yeah.
And if they pass away, like it's kind of expected, so it doesn't, I don't know, doesn't affect me as much as it used to when I first started,
Yeah.
which sounds horrible, but
I know.
we do our best, and I don't know.
No. Yeah.
You know, working in critical care, I don't know, at least for me, it teaches me a level of detachment as well.
Detachment.
Like, oh man, you see it. I don't know. After the several hundreds, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's 365 days out of the year, right?
Yeah.
We've been doing this for how long?
Like 2 years, dude. Talking like over 700
Yeah.
days.
At
And
one-
then you would say in one shift, you're talking 5 to 7 at some point, 5 to 7.
during the
Yes.
you know what? Yeah, during the second wave, it was you know, driving to work, parking in the parking lot. You know, it's gonna be crazy.
Just
It's gonna be a
before
crazy
you even
shift.
walk in.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I can't even imagine. And I know like people that hear this, because this is why I think not a lot of frontline workers talk about this, because it's difficult to talk about, because you're dealing with something that you don't know anything about, but then you're day in and day out stressing yourself out and trying to manage that. So I know to some people, nursing is this glorified profession where it's like, oh, these amazing people. We are, but no one knows what you actually have to go through before shift and after shift.
Yeah, it's so funny because, you know, in nursing school, I always see those advertisements. These nurses, they're so clean.
No,
It's
I know.
funny.
The commercials you mean?
Yeah, nurse.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Healthcare in general,
It's pretty.
especially in the acute care hospital setting, it gets dirty.
Yeah.
It gets real and raw.
Real,
They
raw.
and they never show
smelly.
that on the, you know, the advertisement for.
Well, no, and you know what? That's the crazy thing is that you know, we held frontliners in high regard, especially, you know, during the pandemic, and then us at the school that I work for, we started seeing students drop out. They're kind of like, you know what? I don't think I could do this. I had a student. Our group was going to go to a COVID testing site to run tests for swabs and everything, and then I had a student ask me like, "Wait, do we have to go? Because I have kids. I have, you know." And it was like one of those awkward conversations where I would ask him like, well, why are you going to be a nurse then? What are you going for?
Yeah.
Because that's what people are doing. That's what nurses are doing right now. Not even COVID testing. We're talking like you guys are in the ICU, ER, dealing with it. And, you know, I started seeing, I mean, it was like one of those gatekeepers where there's people that were like, I'm all in. I want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to show up. I want to be there and help on the front lines. And then there were some that were like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm too scared.
Yeah.
And what would be your message to those people then, I guess, that are still looking forward to doing it? Because I think that's not being talked about a lot, of like, all right, there's a lot of nursing students coming in right now. They're coming up. Should there be another pandemic? I don't know what's going to happen in the future. No one knew, right? No one knows anything. Hearing them talk about, you know, hearing you talk about the compassion fatigue and stuff, I think that's why I want to bring up how you can deal with it. Because in my perspective, you guys dealt with it so well. You made it look easy. I'm going to be honest with you. You made it look easy. And oh man, if there's people that come in thinking nursing is easy, it's almost like, oh shoot, they're going to be in for a surprise.
Yeah.
What would you tell that person that's about to graduate nursing, that's going to go into it for ICU, ER, critical care?
I can tell you my reason. I guess you bring up a good point. Like it's an experience for real, working in the healthcare industry as a nurse, RT, whatever capacity you're working. Yeah, I think you would have to have a good reason to want to go through that, right?
You mean that one deep reason, the purpose you're doing this for?
Yeah, everybody's reason is different. At least for me, my reason is I value the knowledge. Health is true wealth. Like, you know, I feel like taking care of sick people teaches you how to take care of yourself, take care of your family, take care of your friends. That's priceless to
Wow.
me.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And if you're going into nursing for the wrong reasons, then that's not enough to keep you in it.
You know, it's
For
fun.
money.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just remembered. I bumped into my cousin. He's like 5-6 years younger than me, and he's like, "I'm gonna be a nurse too." I was eating with her, and yeah, he was working at this restaurant, and he was like, you know, I told his mom too. Yeah, the skills is knowledge. The skills and knowledge is good, but you learn life experiences. I think that's, you know, people don't ever talk about that too.
Yeah.
Seeing life and death, wow, it teaches you real life experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it teaches you what to value.
exactly. It teaches you what is important in life, and you see people just like,
Dude.
yeah,
Yeah, you're right. I try to be some sort of gatekeeper when it comes to my students. Like when students come to me, Kia, you know, the first thing I talk about is like, why are you here? Because it's not easy. And when nursing tests you, and because you're dealing with life and death, and if you think about one shift and one confrontation with a family member, with the patient themselves, like think about life and death, and then everything in between. It's almost all in one moment in the hospital because you're teetering on life and death.
everyone is going to have to go through that experience.
Yeah.
I actually, when my dad was sick, that's what hit me. Like, yeah, he's sick, but eventually I'm gonna have to come back to the situation again.
Wow.
Everyone is gonna have to go through that situation.
Yeah. I mean,
And-
that's the one thing that's promised, right?
Yeah.
Death. We're all gonna die someday.
We're all gonna get sick, and you know, like, what are you gonna do in that situation?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of tough choices by family members in the ICU. No easy choices for sure. That's
Yeah.
why I never blame family members for not knowing what to do. It's no easy answers.
Can you really prepare for that? You know?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Because you can say like, oh, we'll go whatever DNR full code or whatever.
Yeah.
But in that moment, it's almost like quality of life at this point. Like you got to consider that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I want to do everything. I want to do as much as I can to help my family member, even though I don't know there's no chances. Even though I know there's no chances. Now, is that a right or wrong answer? That's not a wrong answer. And sometimes
Sure.
we're taking care of patients where we know there's like zero chance. Like we've taken care of enough patients to know, you know, who has a chance and who doesn't. And I never blame family members for wanting to do everything because they don't know, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And, you know, there's a lot of healthcare providers out there too who's just like, I can't believe they're still trying.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
When it's almost like, man, guys, like they're like the family's really pushing for it, and it's almost like
They're going through
0%
some things.
chance.
Yeah.
It gets to that point where you'll see the team go, I mean, should we just encourage it? Like, what do we tell them? We're telling them everything, and they're really holding on, and that's a hard line to come up to because it's like faith also.
Yeah.
Or some people with their spirituality or their religion, their faith in something bigger than us. It's like I believe they can come out of it, and I think this is what people don't talk about with like in the medical field. We encounter that a lot.
You got to have good communication skills because sometimes you're in there, especially working at a small community hospital like Garfield. You're there and the family member is dying, and the family member and the doctor's not there. You gotta facilitate it somehow.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of situations like that.
and I think nurses are kind of that middle ground. We're like the X factor on the team that communicates with everybody on the team. Because if a family member calls, they'll talk to the nurse because they're actually there.
Yeah.
You know, doctors have different places that they go to, different hospitals that they work at, hundreds of patients in one day, and then you're the one that's there the entire shift. So they'll talk to you, they'll communicate with you, and then now you got to talk to the patient, you got to talk to the doctor, and you almost have to reel everybody into one decision. Like, hey, we got to come to terms.
And sometimes they'll be like, "What do you think?"
Yeah.
Like,
Oh shit, yeah, damn. Like, what do you think? You're the nurse, right? Like,
and you know what?
Man,
To be honest,
that's
we're
tough.
not supposed to be answering those type of questions, but there's no one else there to answer those questions for them.
yeah, That's one thing that we learn real quick. It's like you can't give them a direct answer, but
That's the best way to put it.
you got to give them the information,
Yeah.
right? Like just something as simple as like informed consent. We can't be the one to explain the procedure or anything to somebody, but they're gonna sign the form, and it's like, all right, well, I have a question about the surgery now, and it's like, all right, let me get the doctor back in here because I'm not supposed to be, telling you about it, right? Man, this is an important conversation because a lot of people that are, I guess, coming into nursing and those that aren't aware of what nursing entails, it's not just bedside care. You're managing care. You're managing people.
You're filling a lot of shoes. A counselor sometimes. I don't know, like a teacher.
Yes, you guys educate.
Social worker sometimes.
Yeah,
like,
man.
you're filling a lot of shoes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you could.
Yeah, a lot of the times you're the voice of the patient because they don't know how to explain it to their family member. They don't know how to explain it to the doctor either. I'm telling you, nurses are the X factor, and I'm not biased because I'm a nurse, right? It's more of we're the one there with the patient the entire shift.
Yeah, and you talk about compassion fatigue. I'm pretty sure doctors go through that too.
Mm-hmm.
And in a setting like Garfield, which we work at, doctors can become insensitive as well. There's a lot. No, I'm just saying. Let's just be real, right?
Yeah.
And there'd be a lot of times I remember through my experience at working at Garfield where it seems like they'll trust the nurses more than the doctors.
Wait, who will trust the nurses more?
The patients and the family. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, the doctor was explaining this. I think the patient was getting a pacemaker, and the cardiologist was explaining to the patient the risk and the benefits. And I was standing there just listening, and she looked at me like for my input.
Like, what do you think?
Yeah, what do you think? Should I do this? Like, there was a lot of situations like that for me.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think there's a reason why though. Like I feel like we establish a stronger rapport with a patient.
Yeah. I don't want to say like all doctors are like that. I'm just saying there's some out there that become, it just becomes like a job for them. There's nurses like that too.
Yeah. I hate to say that, but I would say more than 50% at least are like get to that point early where, they don't spend too much. I mean, I hate saying this, but it's the reality that I've seen. This is our kind of view, right? Our perspective based on what we've seen. We're with the patient like a 12-hour shift, and then physicians have so much to do, so I understand, but they're with the patient like 10 15 minutes if any, right?
Yeah.
And I get it
of that too,
but it's one of those things where now like patients are kind of asking us like what would you do kind of thing. And I teach this all the time. You cannot tell them your opinion or what you would do. You can't advise them. We're not advisors.
Yeah.
Damn, it's tough, man. I mean, and again, these are things that are outside of the pandemic. This is not even the pandemic.
It just shows you how complicated the healthcare system is.
Yep.
It's
Yeah. And it's ever changing. It's always changing.
It's always evolving.
Oh my God. And I would even say that when you're a nurse or you're about to be a nurse, you gotta be aware of trends, especially negative trends that are happening throughout the system. I think COVID was this big slap in the face of the healthcare system, but there are trends already happening where what you're talking about right now is like communication skills and things like that. And everything that I do with work is about teaching nurses how to communicate healthier, how to communicate effectively and therapeutically, because you're dealing with confrontation every day.
Confrontation, a lot of emotions in there.
Yeah.
As well.
And how do you manage the emotions?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Going back to what I would tell the new grads, new nurses coming into the workforce during the pandemic. Wow. Yeah. I feel bad for them, and I don't feel bad for a lot of people.
You know what? That's the thing. Like you feel bad, but you also respect the boldness of it.
So
right?
My view is if they make it through, wow, they're going to be one strong nurse.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think, and that's the next stage, I guess, for you that have gone through the pandemic. I think people will look up to you because you work through it. You've lived it.
Yeah, we're lucky to have been experienced up to that point. I feel like we have a little knowledge and skill at that point, but as a new grad, knowing nothing, I've seen even pandemic or not, at least in the ICU setting, new grads, a lot of them struggle.
No, I can imagine. Just in
Fresh
general,
out of school.
Just in general,
Yeah.
right? And shout out to Professor Ed Alfonso. We worked together this last week, and he told me, and he told the students, we're having a conversation with them about this whole like pandemic and stuff, and he was saying that there's a lot of insensitivity going on with new grads coming in. He said he follows like nursing channels on like Instagram and stuff like that, and he started looking at comments, and it's like some people were saying like, oh, are the Zoom nurses coming out yet? And it's like, dang, I mean, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, you know what? For one, let's respect that they're still doing this. But let's understand and have empathy for that, right? Because they're not going to be, I mean, like you said, just standard new grads still have to learn so much. Some of our students that have been graduating, some of the nurses that are graduating right now, some of them have not been in the clinical site as a student ever.
Yeah, and
That's scary.
yeah, that is yeah.
So it's not like, I mean, judging them like, oh, you guys aren't ready. It's more of what you had to go through to get to this point. It's tough. So I'm sure hospitals are going to make adjustments for that. They're going to have extended training and things like that. But just to have that idea that some nurses are hitting the floor and they don't have any clinical experience at all. It's been virtual, like Zoom meetings or virtual simulations, stuff like that. It's good knowledge, but the actual hands-on skill is lacking. Not to scare anybody, but it's almost like, all right, instead of poking at them, let's take them in, because they're doing something that not a lot of people are doing. But you're gonna see it in the next couple of years. It's gonna be a trend.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary. I told my cousin, the real learning starts when you work.
Yeah, the experience.
Yeah. And come to all right, I gotta say this, like, I'm not talking about all hospitals. I'm pretty sure the big and prestigious hospitals like Cedars-Sinai, UCLA, they have a good new grad program. But how about all these other more numerous community hospitals?
Yeah.
Where they don't have the resources. What are they going through?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No new grad program. I remember at I have so many stories.
Go ahead.
What do our new grads do now? All right, I gotta preface this.
Yeah.
Community hospitals, it's an awesome place to learn. If you can make it there, you can definitely make it. That's my opinion. Through the bigger hospitals, wow, you work like a resident there.
Wow.
And I'm working at a big hospital right now, and I see how these doctors learn. We work in that capacity at a community hospital. It's just the doctor and us, and that's it. Now, to say that, orientation fresh out of school in the ICU at Garfield is like, what, 6 weeks?
6 weeks. Yeah.
6 weeks, and
Yeah.
you're expected to perform on your own after that.
Yeah. You're on your own. Swim.
Now, at LEC USC, in order to work at a ICU in the ICU setting, you have to work 6 months on the med surg floor first,
Oh, I see.
and you got to take classes.
Nice.
So it's a lot of training. Yeah, I remember a good coworker of mine. His name is Tim. He got floated up to the med surg floor. This is him telling me the story. And he was like, yeah, the charge nurse begged me to take on 3-4 new grads because he was the only experienced one.
Wow.
All the other nurses had only 1-2 months of experience. And so is that like sort of like the blind leading the blind? Imagine you only have 1 or 2 months worth of experience, and then you have to teach someone else to do the job. And they're taking care of your grandmother. They're taking care of your mother.
Yeah.
COVID really shocked the system for sure.
It did. And I think it's going to take a while to kind of come out of this and start surviving it, like treading water.
And this is just one hospital in the greater LA area.
Yeah.
A lot. I'm sure. I have a lot of coworkers who left Garfield and branched out to the surrounding hospitals, and they tell me stories of how hard they have it too. So we're all going through a hard time.
Yeah, and it's super enticing because hospitals are able to offer bonuses now, like sign-on bonuses and loyalty programs. But yeah, the money's good, but the reason why they're offering that is because it's not easy. You're gonna come in here, and a newer nurse, a less experienced nurse, is gonna be training you. I mean, that's scary. I know there's gonna be a transition, right? So
there was a large exodus of skilled nurses out of the workforce for sure.
During the pandemic,
one, because either they're, you're a 60-year-old nurse. I don't want to catch COVID and die.
It's true.
And on another layer, I mean, they say, I don't know what the percentage is. This is a high percentage of older nurses that are set to retire. The baby boomer.
Yeah.
Starting 2020, 21. Yeah, a lot of nurses are set to retire anyway.
It's a hell of a time to be a nurse.
Yeah.
It's a hell of a time to be a student nurse, a nurse, or anybody in the healthcare field. Because, you have like this big chunk of people that's ready to retire, or they just leave the floor. And then you have...
with years of experience.
Yeah. And knowledge.
Yeah.
That could really help the next generation.
Yeah. Sometimes you don't learn these things in books.
Yeah. You learn by experiencing it in your face.
Yeah. And I felt like I had a good training.
Me too.
We're the lucky ones.
You're so soft spoken, but you've always been like that. And I always wondered, like, man, how did you deal with this? I'm still gonna try to get it out of you, damn it.
Right? It's like she's just...
you're like a stone wall, but
want her to fly, but yet she's seeing death and devastation.
No, and that's, I mean, I guess that's where we can kind of end out here. It's I think it shocked the system for one, but it also shocked life in general for a lot of people. What do you have now that's going to keep pushing you forward to be a nurse, to continue nursing, to continue training people, to continue serving people in the world? Because, I mean, just the thought of facing death, and even facing death so much that you got fatigued, and you're like, all right, you know what? It's just another death. That's not normal. So I would ask, how did it shift your perspective about life and your life now? Like, what do you do? How do you look at life? What matters to you now? And how can we help just the general population, not even just in the hospital, but what's your message to people out there now?
Wow, that's a hard question.
Fuck yeah, you're on the Broken Instruments podcast.
I have my way of thinking, my defense mechanisms. It's a little along the Buddhist way of thinking. At times, you just have to detach yourself. Nothing is permanent in this world. That's the way I think sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the rawest thing I think we can get, is that you almost have to embrace death at that point.
Yeah, that's a deep question.
Yeah.
Powerful question.
I think it's important to separate your work life and your personal life, but sometimes it's hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go home and you still think about that patient, their family.
Yeah.
But
just to think that family member was going and you were the last person they saw.
yeah,
I mean, can you even count how many times that happened?
way too much.
It becomes one big ball of memory for me.
Damn. And then all of a sudden, 2 years go by.
Yeah.
It's
Wow,
freaking
that was
March
fast.
2022.
That was fast. Yeah. I've seen whole families get decimated.
Damn.
COVID.
Damn.
And man, I'd say COVID is like one of the worst ways to die. You're basically suffocating for like weeks, months.
Like your breathing just gets worse and worse to that point where you can't even breathe anymore. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Suffocating?
They gotta They gotta give
Oh,
you.
I have a story that I just remembered.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had a COVID patient. This woman, she was intubated in our ICU, and then her husband was on the tele floor, also COVID positive. And then one day he transferred to our unit, had to get intubated too, and he was right next to her.
Oh, I remember
You
that.
remember that?
Yeah,
Oh,
I remember
shoot.
that. And
In the same room.
his bed was situated where all he had to do was lift his head, and he would see his wife
But they couldn't.
right next
was-
to each other.
Oh,
window
but they
walls.
weren't able to.
They were both intubated.
Oh shoot!
Yeah, a lot of stories like that.
Wow. Oh no.
And they both passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
and-
man.
Wow, I don't know, to put myself in his shoes. Wow, that's hell to be through.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very dark.
Dark, yeah.
How do you deal with that, dude?
It's just struggling to breathe. Like, they have to give you drugs to calm you down for you not to struggle because you're suffocating.
Yeah, because the more you struggle,
The
less-
higher
the
your
less
oxygen,
oxygen you're gonna
the
get.
the more you struggle, the more oxygen demand you require,
Yep.
and you just don't have the capacity with COVID.
Oh my god. Yeah. Just to hear like a husband and a wife or a whole family decimated, it makes you think. And I posted something recently because I lost a family member in the Philippines. One of my closest aunts to my mom's side. You think back in the last couple of years of all the people that have died that we know. If COVID never happened, what would their life have been? Were they supposed to die this way, or was COVID like out of nowhere? Like, or this was the entire plan the entire time, and it was like a cleansing thing of, I don't know, people are saying it's like the cleansing thing of the earth or something, but you think of all the people that you know that have passed away. If there was no pandemic, would they still be here, and how would they have gone? It's rough to think about. And I know, like, see, that's the thing. It's very dark and it's very ominous to think about death, but just like, you know, the Buddhist way of thinking or the Stoic way of thinking, if nothing's promised in this world, then how do we value what we have right now in the moment? And sometimes, like, we're broken people. We're not perfect people. We deal with shit every day, stress, whatever. But yet, how do you come back and continue to live and do your best every day? Do you still get that stress when you show up to work? Or is it, I mean, it's different than what it was before, but
Yeah.
you still feel that?
It's definitely a lot less crazy at this point. It's not a pretty job. I feel better now. I feel better.
I would
now.
imagine, because you've dealt with like the craziest days, that you're kind of like, all right, this can never be as bad as it once was.
Right.
Man.
We'll see.
Yeah, no, I know. And it's one of those things like you don't want to speak too soon.
One thing in the ICU that I've learned is anything can happen at any time.
Damn, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, and I'm sure people have talked about ICU like this past couple of years. Like, that's a term that people, like every family probably heard or said, oh, so-and-so got transferred to the ICU. I hate to think that it's almost a death sentence at that point. You want to instill hope to people. But like you guys pointed out, there's this fine line of being having reality or having like faith. How can you conjoin the two together? Because life is not promised. We don't know at this point.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would assume, and I don't know how people take this, but I would assume that people can think about nurses the same way, but hearing this perspective gives them understanding of what you actually have to deal with. It's not easy, and it takes a very dark perspective to be able to manage it. Because what's the point of being a nurse if you get overly emotional for a situation? And we always say it's selfless sometimes to not get emotional. It's selfless to not get involved so deeply with situations, because if you get taken by that situation, like that family member's dying and then everybody's in that moment and you get emotionally drawn to it and you're reactive with it, what good are you for the next patient? Because someone else in the next room needs you to be on it.
Wow, that's a good point. Yeah, sometimes you have to operate fast and with no emotions to better take care of your patients.
Yeah.
You know, a deeper question is, what is the true reality of life? A lot of people are not exposed to death and dying. So
Yeah.
I like to give the example of, do you want to take the red pill or you want to take the blue pill?
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a side to life that a lot of people don't see.
And they try to avoid it.
Yeah, and they try to avoid it, and
I
it's
commend
a
nurses.
experience
Yeah,
for
no,
me.
I commend nurses because it's almost like you dive in and you look at the real world the way it is. I see people, I see nursing students, I see that light bulb go off, even like in a mental health floor. They're like, oh my God, like this patient's story is so dark. And I always tell them, this is the real world. And that's what we have to deal with. We have to manage that and help this person based on, off of after everything that this person has been through. How can we get them functioning enough to look positively in the world again? Because they've suffered horrible things. So it is the red pill, unfortunately. And when you become a nurse, you're going to take the world as it is.
You know, that's why I don't like talking to, I don't like telling stories to my families about ICU. I mean, I love to share it with other nurses or other doctors or other healthcare workers that have been through it. But with, at least with my families, I just don't like talking. I don't like recounting stories of what happened in the ICU. It's dark and raw.
And before this conversation, you guys talked and you said you barely even talked to each other about it.
Yeah, it's raw.
It's raw and it's draining.
Just dark.
It's very dark. It's very draining, but it's
important.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like you guys said, you would talk about it at the end of a shift and like kind of recap it, but not like, all right, where are we at with life again?
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that? Like, how do you reconcile life again? Like, all right, you deal with the whole shift of managing death, and then you go out to the real world and everyone's hanging out at a restaurant and a movie that you're hanging out with friends.
There's a lot of layers to it.
Yeah.
Deep questions like life and death, and then deep questions about our culture and society. The healthcare system is a machine.
Well, let me ask you guys: What would you rather have? Would you rather have taken the blue pill, or would you rather have taken the red pill, as dark as it is?
Well, I obviously took the red pill.
Kia, which pill did you take, man?
I don't know.
The purple one?
She took the red pill without knowing it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's what it is. A lot of people take nursing and they don't realize that it is a reality check.
Yeah.
And we live in a dark world.
One day you're doing fine, the next day you're in the ICU.
What is your career path from now on? Are you sticking to the floor? I know you're a travel nurse now, right?
Yeah.
Kia, you're still in the ICU at the same hospital, correct?
Unfortunately.
Oh no. Do you have? What's your next step? I guess. Are you continuing that? Are you trying to change your elevate in your career? What are you guys doing?
I'm still reevaluating it day by day. I'll know when the answer. I'm open to staying in the healthcare field.
Yeah.
But if I can, we'll see. I'm still reevaluating it.
Sticking to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
It's good. Yeah.
Man, that's the thing. I left the floor pretty early in my nursing career. I went to education. I never saw myself as staying on the floor, let alone dealing with stuff that you guys dealt with. But to hear that, it gives me a lot of hope that, you know what, you've lived through some hard times, but yet you're still going forward at it.
Yeah.
I respect that. I respect that wholeheartedly. And you guys are some dark people, man.
Oh, shoot.
But you know what? That's the reality of life,
ICU
though.
experience. Yeah, it's not pretty.
It's not pretty, but it's real. And I think that's what people need to hear. It's a tough pill to swallow. But then again, this is what life is about, unfortunately. Life is unfortunate for some people, for almost everybody.
Well, what are your expectations out of life? With COVID happening, you can't cure death.
No. And you can only run for so long. I would say people finally, I think, are realizing now that making healthy lifestyle modification,
Yeah.
that's what it is. And finally, we're talking about that. Lifestyle modification.
Preventative measures.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, one way is to not go into the ICU in the first place.
Avoid it. at all costs.
That's the best situation.
Yeah.
Because once you get into the ICU, there's a reason. I mean, yeah, it's not, there's a lot of problems where you get into like a car accident, just something sudden that you can't change. But a lot of the problems has been building up for years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So preventative measures, yeah, that's the key.
Wow. And then, people argued early in the pandemic, they're like, all right, well, it's too late now. Like it's already here. We're 2 years out of that. And I mean, I would hope that people have gotten healthier in the last 2 years. From the beginning of the pandemic, the idea was, all right, let's start now. And instead of saying, all right, it's too late, start that modification 2 years ago. And then over the last 2 years, we would have made that change, I would assume. And ideally, that's what we hope for everyone, for everybody that's still dealing with medical issues. I think a lot of people woke up the past couple of years about the realities of health. So,
yeah.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you guys on the Broken Instruments podcast. I think it's important that everybody hears this kind of perspective on it. Nursing is not easy, not even considering a pandemic. Like outside of a pandemic, nursing is already tough.
Healthcare
in general. And then we were throwing this curveball, and not a lot of people were able to last. And I would tell you, I respect both of you, and I respect everybody that stuck through, the actual frontliners that have dealt with everything about the pandemic, everything we talked about. And it's even more respectable that you guys are pushing forward at the same thing. You guys have seen it. You guys have seen the hard times, but you're, in a way, darkly embracing it. That's what's crazy to me.
We're all in this together in some way or fashion.
Life in general, man.
Yeah,
Shit.
life in general.
And I mean, and that's what's crazy is that we cross paths together and we talk about these things, but it also helps me reflect on life and what matters to me too. Because at the end of the day, nothing is promised. So what do we do with that knowledge? What do we do with that realization? Wow.
Well put.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming, man.
It's a pleasure talking to you, Jordan. Always.
Always, man. Always. And this is like one of many talks that we've had, and it's going to be continuing throughout. So yeah. I'm grateful for you guys.
Great for you too, man.